Hello guys, and welcome to another video in the Toolkit workflow video series. In this one I will talk about workflow and give some general advice. So it's not strictly about the product, but I think it's very important things to know for any retoucher. And then I'll show how the panel will help you with it. So to do this, I pulled up a really old image. This was retouched with the old version way before all these new improvements. So if I were to do this retouch today, it would be 100 times better probably. Not only because the tools are much better, also because I learned a lot since then. But I still wanted to show it because it proves that a workflow will almost always be the same. So establishing a good workflow is gonna really help you. And especially if you want to do a non-destructive retouching. Back in the day, people used to merge everything and just work on the pixel layers. This worked, of course. Like, the only thing that matters in the end is the result. But it became a problem if the client came to you and said, oh, we need this to be changed, or you'd have to start over. So that's the whole purpose of non-destructive, and you'll hear this word a lot. Everyone sort of like a buzzword. To me, I try and keep it as non-destructive as possible, but I don't do it if it's at the cost of having a file size that's 300 times the original. And I've seen this. It happens a lot when people do a lot of frequency separation. So I tend to stay away from this. And when I use it, I try and limit the file size by cutting out, so it's only the area that I want to change, not the whole image. But anyway, let's get back to this. So my old workflow, which is pretty much the same still, I want to go through it because it's interesting. I would start with a markup. Sadly, I don't think I did any in this one. And if I did, I might have thrown it away. But markup would be me just making notes on top of the image. And then, well, of course, it starts in RAW, but that's a whole different thing. We can talk about that at another time. And today, I probably would have processed this a little bit differently in RAW, but it doesn't matter. First thing I always do is healing and cloning, which means repair. And then I work with dodge and burn, which will fix lightness issues, or luminosity, or brightness and darkness, whatever you want to call it. I usually try and stick to the true luminosity, because then the blend modes for color correction will not work against you, because color in itself has a brightness. So a blue color is not going to appear as bright as a yellow, for example. So you have to take into account a lot when you get into color. And it also behaves very differently depending on how bright or dark it is. So if you only change the luminosity or only change the brightness, then all the colors are going to look horrible where you change it. The best way to do it is through exposure in the raw converter actually. So if you really have the time, then you could do multiple conversions in the raw converter, because that will give you the least color problems. But it also has a bit of a downside because it's not as flexible as dodge and burn. And once you get a little bit better, you can fix the issues that come up with dodge and burn. And if you are like me, who researched a lot about dodge and burn, I actually have a version here that's almost pixel perfect to exposure. How exposure compensates for colors changing in brightness. It's not in this particular image though, but I just wanted to mention it. So anyway, after repair, I do dodge and burn. And in this one, I did selective saturation afterwards, but in my normal workflow, it's saturation and color kind of goes together in the same. In my workflow here, you'll see it's pretty much the same though. Like if you go top to bottom, says repair, says dodge and burn, says selective saturation, and says color correction. So the selective saturation that's here, sometimes I skip depending on, I can fix saturation with the color correction at the same time. But it depends on what it is, and what, in this particular case, I did selective saturation. And then for some reason I did contrast before color corrections here. Wouldn't do that today, but I did. So my next step would be, like I said, color corrections. I see a lot of issues with this image, so it's like no way an image to show a perfect retouch. It's just a way to talk about workflow, and I thought it was a perfect example to use an old image. And then did a bit of grading on top, and that's the retouch that I did. So on this with just a few steps, really basic steps as well, no magic, just need to practice. And again, this result is in nowhere near what some other professionals are capable of doing in just really short time. It's also not really a beauty image, more of a test shot of a friend of mine. Yeah, but let's see how I would have done it today, just to use this workflow panel a little bit before we run out of time. I want to keep these videos quite short. So maybe we'll do two parts of this one. Yeah. So let's duplicate this image and ended up on a different duplicate merged. Now I have only the original. I'm gonna see so you can see panel and everything. I have the microphone a little bit in the way, but it's fine. So with this workflow panel and the workflow that you saw that I had on the other, it's basically from top to bottom is how I work. And then like special stuff is more hidden away. So I'm not gonna go into any of these in this particular video. We'll see how long it is, but intention, like I said in the intro, if anyone watched the intro before this one, I hope so. I want to do more specific examples of when and where to use what. But this is an overview of our workflow. So something that's a little bit of a lesson now at the end here before we jump into part 2 then, I guess, is texture. So a lot of people think that texture is what you see if you zoom into 100% of an image. So this would be the texture. But in reality, no one's gonna view the image like this. At least not if it's not printed huge. So always try and keep in mind what the image is for. And one little trick to do that is to use 2-up vertical. It's available in the menus. This is by no means no magic. And we can close the old one. So then I could have, if I have to work zoomed in, I always teach to try and work as zoomed out as possible so you see the whole image. Only zoom in when you really need to. The biggest beginner mistake that I see all the time is they zoom into 100% or maybe even 200% because they want to have precision when they're retouching. And that's it's the wrong approach. Because then you get blind and you think like, oh, this looks good. And you zoom out and it looks like someone put a filter over the whole image. And it's the same mistake that a lot of people do with frequency separation when they use it on skin. Is they use filters or they paint with a soft brush or they use a mixer brush with a soft edge. And that will destroy the texture. Not at 100%, but if you view it at the distance where it's supposed to be viewed, like for example, if this was for, let's pretend it's a more high-end image, if this was for a magazine, then you'd want to retouch it more according to, let's see, let's just have this at 100% as an example. You'd want to retouch it more according to the left side here. So it doesn't need to look good here. It needs to look good here. That's the most important part. Of course, sometimes you need to zoom in to be able to fix things. But mostly keep an eye on the overall result. And another tip actually is I hate to have this type of setup because I have 2 screens. So what I do is I drop this image on my other screen. So I always have it open and I try to match the size of a magazine or whatever the target is. So I have the other monitor standing on the other side as well. So anyway, when you have 2 of the images like this, it's the same image. So you could, if you wanted to, you could retouch on both. Doesn't matter which one you retouch on. So if I draw red here, it will end up here. If I draw red here, let's just draw down here. Now when I release, look. Looks like she's crying blood, but yeah. Little bit of an advantage, but nowadays I got so used to zooming out that I try to just stay as zoomed out as possible, and not get tired of the image. Rotate it a bit. It's just you press R and then you can rotate as you wish. Okay. Next video, we will show how I would do the workflow with the panel, but not with actual retouching, but how the workflow would look like and what buttons I would press. So see you soon.